Welcome to the Secret Sauce of Outsourcing podcast that's dedicated to making you better at working with online Filipino specialists. This is episode 388, how we deal with raises. So we typically give raises in January, but the process starts in December. And in this podcast, I'm going to go over how we do raises, not how it's proper to do raises or the correct way to do raises, because there isn't really a correct way or a proper way. I'm just going to give you a bunch of things to think about, some things that I've seen other people do, how we do it. So Here's kind of our process. In December, typically, we both start reviewing our list of people who work for us and how much they make and how much we think they should get in bonuses. Now, this includes how well did they do throughout the year, and we're typically going to start addressing issues that we come up because sometimes we ignore issues throughout the year, which we shouldn't do, but we do. Then come January, we're going to review this again. In December, the review is geared towards giving people a bonus. In January, it's geared towards reviews. We review the same thing individually. We're not doing this together in a meeting. We don't really ever have meetings. Well, we do. It's just very, very rare. So we're going to review these things individually, write down our notes and our suggestions for what we think we should give. Now, we're going to do this based off of their performance last year, how well we think they did, what kind of effort they're putting in, and what we can afford. So typically when hiring a new OFS, we don't tell them that they're going to get a guaranteed raise after a certain amount of time. We just tell them that we want them to try hard, and we typically give raises in January, although it's not guaranteed. And we tell them based off of their performance. So in January, they don't know what to expect. They don't know if they can expect a raise. And if we hired someone in November, then in January, we're probably not going to give a raise because it's too early to give that raise. We've also on occasion given a raise after a number of months, because we hired someone, we started them off lower than they wanted to be, then we're going to raise them in a couple months to where we think they should be, based off of, yes, their performance is actually where we expected them to be. So then in January, people only know that they're getting a raise when we send them an email and say, hey, we're raising your salary, and thank them for the work that they did this past year and tell them our expectations for the year coming. So there's no expectation for a raise. Well, some people have been with us long enough, they probably have an expectation, but typically new people, they don't have an expectation of a raise because we haven't given that expectation. From there moving forward, we noticed that raises, it's a motivating factor. Like people will often improve work after getting a raise. Not significantly, but we'll notice it. So this is rare, but there have been occasions where we didn't give a raise because performance didn't warrant the raise. And usually when this happens, we won't say, hey, we're not giving you a raise. We'll just bring something up, and it gives people a chance to justify their situation or to tell you what's really going on or to explain. It also gives us a chance to talk back and forth and be honest with each other and come up with a solution. So now back to actually giving the raise and how much do we give? Well, almost everybody on our team is salaried. We pay them a monthly amount. That amount is set regardless of how much they work. We're not tracking their hours. So we typically give raises between, let's say, $25 to $100 per person per month. And that will depend on how much they're currently making and percentage there. But usually it's a nice round number, and we're not like taking a 6% raise or something like that. We look at it and say, well, I think you're better, or I think you have more to give, or whatever it is, right? So we're typically giving $25 to $100 a month in raise. I have had some employers say, oh, my person's making $5 an hour, I'm going to give them a $1 an hour raise. Well, that's fine. That $1 an hour is a 20% raise, which is a significant raise, and I'm sure they'll be thrilled with it. The employer or employers have often asked me, is $1 an hour enough of a raise, or is it not enough? And when I've asked my people, what do you think about this employer giving this $1 an hour raise? They say that's too much. But again, there's not a correct way to do this. One thing I would consider, and something we consider, is sustainability. So we look at what we can afford to give. And we could afford to give more, or we could afford to give less, depending on how much we're making, whatever it is. But just because you can afford more doesn't make that correct. It does set an expectation for the future. And what we hope to have is a sustainable, long-term working relationship with people. And if you give really big raises once or twice, then really big raises become expected. And if that's sustainable for your business, it's a different story. But if you have a $5 an hour person and you're giving a dollar an hour raise, 6, next year you're going to be at 7, and next year you're going to be at 8 and 9 and 10. And in 5 years, their wage has doubled in 5 years. Which, okay, great, as long as your business can sustain that. And that's where I'm working towards is you want this to be sustainable. And if you're giving raises that aren't sustainable over time, That's a problem. And here's why it's really a problem. It's not a problem in giving them more money, because I'm all for paying people, giving them more, helping them rise out of their current situation, gain a better life. I love that. But if you give a really big raise this year and next year you give a small raise, very, very often in the Philippines, they're going to think, what did I do wrong that they didn't give me as much of a raise this year? They're going to think, why are they mad at me? Or what have I done? Or is my job in jeopardy? And it can actually cause their work to suffer because they're really worried about making a mistake now. So not in every case, but I've seen it enough times. So considering sustainability and affordability and what are you going to do next year is part of this raise conversation. So now let's talk about hourly people, how we handle it. So typically we would handle an hourly person. We would base it off of exactly the same way we do a salaried person. So an hourly person, we take an approximation of how much they make per month. We're going to give a similar raise to what our salaried people are. And then we're going to cut that back into an hourly number. We'll do the division, whatever it is. Then there have been occasions where we have given a really big raise based off of someone's exceptional performance throughout the year. Sometimes we give that raise during the middle of the year because they're so good. Typically it's going to still be in January. Every time we've done that, we have also given the explanation that I wouldn't expect this next year. I don't know, but we're just really happy with what you've done with what you've done. We don't often give raises like this. We'll explain it to them. So do you have to give a raise in January? Could you do it in June? Yes, you can do it in June. You don't have to do it in January. Nothing magical about January. That's just how we do it. And again, there is no standard for how this should work. I just want to give you things to consider. And especially in considering that the last year, I mean, it's 2024 now, the last year has had a lot of inflation and wages generally are going up, but they're not going up as much as people want you to think. My son, who's in the Philippines, keeps talking to me about people making $400 US a month. If they could make $400 a month, they'd be really happy. So, I mean, for people to be making $800 a month or $1,200 a month, you know, it's pretty good. They're not like kings of the world making that money, but they're doing really well. And so when people tell you, oh no, I need to make $10 an hour, well, you know, there aren't very many people in the Philippines that make $10 an hour. So do they need to make that? No. Do you need to give a raise? No. Should you? Yeah, you probably should. And it's part of just being a good boss and taking care of the people that work for you and the people that take care of you.